You are here for the Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine webinar at University of Western States. Today, we're going to tell you about our programs. And so I do want to go over just a brief schedule for today. Today's webinar, as you can see up here, is going to be an overview of University of Western States, but also the people who run our program. We'll also talk about our approach to functional medicine and our approach to the programs, as well as online learning with us. We'll touch on the curriculum, the entry requirements, go over a little bit about payment and financial aid before we get your questions at the end of this. You'll hear it plenty of times today, but should questions come up after the webinar, do feel free to reach out to our offices. We are very happy to be of help. So a little bit about UWS. Initially, we were founded in 1904. We are just about to hit 120 years old, but we were a chiropractic college for most of that time. Then we started to mix things up. And in 2012, we collaborated with the IFM to create the Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine degree, the master's degree. We have seen that program, both the graduate certificate and the human nutrition and functional medicine programs, grow and grow, especially in the years after 2018. As you see there, we hit 400 students in that year. So that's about where we are right now, total in the program. We have added a few more folks because in 2021, we added the DCN, the Doctor of Clinical Nutrition pathway. And in 2022, we've got some special new announcements that you'll hear about today, talking about the integrated biochemistry pathway for folks interested in that master's in human nutrition and functional medicine, as well as a special announcement for our DCN. If you chatted with me perhaps 2 years ago, maybe 1 year ago, and you were outside of the US and not a US citizen, I would have told you, so sorry about not joining that DCN due to some visa restrictions. We found a way around that. That program is now 100% online, and it opens it up to international students. So let's talk about who is overseeing our program. These are our program directors. This is Dr. Daniel Redwood. He used to practice chiropractic, but now is overseeing our program. He has written textbooks in the past. He has lectured, but now, as you see at the bottom, he is teaching the Whole Foods Nutrition course, as well as supervising the mentorship in the HNFM Master's Program. Dr. Chris Brown is our other co-director of the program. He's actually a graduate of UWS's Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine program. He has taught clinical nutrition at universities, including at UWS, a few courses in our capstone course, and also used to be a chiropractor himself. So utilized functional medicine in his practice, and then eventually came to UWS for a degree and joined us a little bit later as our program director. So the big question here is, why would you choose the Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine Masters or our graduate certificate programs? Now, when you're looking at them, you will see, I always suggest read through the curriculum. You're going to see functional medicine principles and practices woven into each course. Close collaboration with the IFM means that we are getting things as up to date as possible. We also have some pretty great deals with the IFM where it may be if you've gone to their classes before, you can bring those over for some elective credit, or while you're with us, you do get a discount with the IFM. And after you graduate from our program, you have a discount. So we are big fans of each other. If you are checking us out online, you may see that some places are ranking us highly in nutrition programs, especially in online nutrition programs. So give that a look. But when you're looking for nutrition and functional medicine, there's truly nothing named quite like our degree. You might see some things out there that are integrative medicine, holistic medicine, holistic nutrition, things that touch on some of those points. But in our degree, we're going to see human nutrition and functional medicine in those courses in quite a detailed way. And it does meet the coursework requirement for the CNS and the CCN. If you might be looking into taking those licensure tests or completing those hours, especially for the CNS, that is a common goal for many of our graduates, and our degree many times is used as a stepping stone towards that goal. Now, you may also be here looking at our DCN program. This is going to be something that a lot of folks are actually creating a bit of an impromptu 4-year degree. They might be going to our master's program and then eventually sliding right into that DCN. It is doctoral level knowledge. We are going both wider and deeper than in the master's degree. We do require that you have master's degree experience in nutrition specifically. Again, we have that close collaboration with the IFM, and this is a degree that I like to think of. I might use these words in here. We think of it as expanding the clinical toolkit. So this is really useful for people who are thinking, I might be going into, business with myself or others, maybe opening my own clinic. Entrepreneurship might be in your future, but I'm looking to really know in depth both that nutrition knowledge and how you get started with the clinic, how you plan out those things for people who are seeking out your care. This is going to touch on those things, as well as making sure that you have those collaborative care strategies. If you are working with other teams that may be involved in this person's health journey, we want to make sure you're doing that in the best way possible. To back up just a little, a lot of people might be saying, hey, you've said functional medicine here a few times. Help me understand, what is functional medicine? And you certainly could read the definition here on the screen, but I also like to talk about functional medicine as though your body were a house and there is a leak in the roof and water is coming through and it's spilling onto the floor. In kind of conventional medicine practices, what we would expect is that somebody would bring you a bucket and would say, hey, I have this really good bucket. You can go ahead and put it underneath that leak. And when the bucket is full, you just throw it out the door, easy peasy. Functional medicine instead says, why is there a leak in your house? Is it possible that maybe a family of raccoons is living in the ceiling, or a meteor went through your house, or maybe it is a burst pipe? But in order to know, we're going to have to know you as the whole person. Now, I'm going to pause here for just a second because I can see that there are many of you watching right now, and you might have questions so far, and I want to tell you about a feature that I think will be helpful. You are already in the HNFM community. If you are looking around, you might see that there's also a chat feature. If you have questions during our webinar as we continue along, I have a teammate on my end, Bregan, who is helping me man that chat. If as we're going through this, a little clarity would be helpful, or you have perhaps an offhand question, feel free to throw that in the chat. Folks might benefit from being able to read it as well and know the answer, and Bregan will help us get to that. You're also welcome to use the Q&A and submit an anonymous question if you might like me to check it out later, or that Q&A we'll utilize to make sure that we address folks' questions after the webinar as well. So if your question doesn't get answered during the webinar, throw it in that Q&A and we'll make sure to reach out to you afterwards. But the HNFN community is something I like to pause and acknowledge for a moment because it is a really special group of people. We are chatting with a really, really diverse group of folks here. People come from all sorts of backgrounds. I talk with people who maybe have always been in the nutrition community. Other people are kind of taking a look for the very first time and making a really big change. Even still, there are other people who maybe are nurses or doctors or physical therapists and see the ways that nutrition and functional medicine might benefit their patients and want to make sure that they're bringing the best, most well-rounded information they can in the room with them whenever they are seeing patients. So you'll see here that our student demographics, they're all over the place. I speak with people with just amazing backgrounds and people who have had huge impacts through nutrition, both on others and maybe even on themselves. But the people who are teaching you also have a diversity of backgrounds. They might be in nutrition, but they also could be in chiropractic or social work or medicine or sport and performance psychology. There's all sorts of folks who are in our program, and each one of those pieces just makes a bit of the whole, and that whole is really the strongest thing we have, the ability to call on people who know different ways of approaching perhaps the person in front of you who needs your help, and can use their resources to help you get that person better. So no matter who is coming in our classroom, though, there is something that does kind of blend everybody into one group that is having this rich and diverse discussion, and that is being a critical thinker. These are folks who might describe themselves as lifelong students. These are people who might describe themselves as hungry for knowledge or always looking into things, somebody who has always been curious. We, no matter what your background might be, no matter what your beliefs might be, are always addressing these nutritional controversies in a climate of respect. We believe in making sure that you are bringing research to the table. We have numerous journals that we subscribe to through our library. It's a fantastic library. We can get interlibrary loans as well if you may see something in another library that you like. And so people are often bringing to the table research that others may or may not have seen and utilizing that to support their position. So that's something you could really expect on the day to day. Now let's do just a brief overview of the degrees. So the first one we're going to talk about is our Master's in Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. This one requires a bachelor's degree with a 2.75 GPA or higher. So if you're under a 2.75 GPA, we do have some options that you can take a look at, including taking the GRE or MAT tests. Those are tests that if you were scoring 50% or higher, we could waive that requirement for a 2.75 GPA. We do require some prerequisites. There is a pathway with us that includes the biochemistry prerequisite as well. So those prerequisites you'll see listed a little bit later. You can also find them online, but biochemistry is included in those prerequisites. And for people who may have taken chemistry previously and may like to do biochemistry with UWS, that is available for you. So you would need a C minus or higher in chemistry. But if that sounds like you, let us know and we can tell you a little bit more about that. The degree is 100% online. It is typically 2 years, but it has flexible pacing. The total number of credits is 56. It is the quarter system as well. So there are 4 quarters in each year. So we just began our October fall quarter. That'll run through the end of the year. January will be a new quarter run through mid-March. Then April will begin our end of March, actually. April will begin our spring quarter. That will run through June. And then in July is our summer quarter. All right, so our graduate certificate varies in a few ways. It has quite a bit of overlap with our master's degree as far as curriculum, but this is really designed for people who may already have a healthcare degree. They may be clinicians. It's also 100% online, but it requires a 3.0 GPA and a master's, or a 3.0 GPA and a master's, 3.0 GPA and a master's in a healthcare degree field. So that might be nurses, it might be our folks who are doctors, our optometrists, our physical therapists. They might be looking for an additive, but not an entire new master's degree. This is going to be about 1 year, but you do have up to 3 years to get it done. So like I mentioned, most folks are taking about 1 year, and it is 30 credits long, again, in that quarter system. And lastly, I want to talk about our overview of the Doctorate of Clinical Nutrition. This one requires a master's as well, but that master's is in nutrition specifically. There are a few other ones that are titled similarly that might be a little bit off the path of nutrition. We could always take a look at your degree if you might like, dive a little bit deeper, see if it covers the topics that we need. But it does include functional medicine no matter what. So if you do the UWS Masters, that of course includes functional medicine. That will be a perfect way to get ready for this degree. But if you might be coming from another degree program and that does not have functional medicine in it, we do have a way to get that. We have an on-demand course that the IFM, our good friends, have helped us create. So if that sounds like you, let us know and we'll let you know a little bit more. It is 100% online. Again, designed to expand that clinical toolkit, and it is a 2-year track. I know for those other ones, I mentioned that they were quite flexible. For the master's degree, you do have up to 5 years if you would like. For that graduate certificate, that number is 3 years. For this DCM, I like to make sure to highlight that this is not the same amount of flexibility. Instead, this is a 2-year track with a cohort model. So it is, as you can see, there's 65 credits. And that cohort model, that means that you are going to start with the same people that you are going to see throughout the degree's progression. So it is not a mix and match style in the way that our master's degree might be, where you can take a few more one term and maybe a few less another term. Instead, we could tell you right now what each one of those terms is looking like. And like I mentioned, it is open to international students beginning in fall 2023. And I'll give you just a moment here because I think it is always helpful to read the courses and see what's on there. So go ahead and take a look there on the right and see what some of those courses are. You can see that there's some foundational ones, intermediate level ones, and then we end with our capstone course as well. And if you wanted to read a little bit more about this, maybe read the course descriptions, you can go online to academics, human nutrition, functional medicine, and then eventually make your way to curriculum. And there you will see the course descriptions in full. They are also in our catalog if you prefer that version. So this is the page that often has people the most excited. These are our elective courses. So I'll pause there and let you read through them, but you do get to choose 2 electives. So maybe make a little mental note for yourself. And while you guys are reading through those electives, I'm going to check out the Q&A for just anything that might be urgent. All right, somebody mentioned that they did not quite understand who could do biochemistry with UWS. The people who could do biochemistry with UWS have done chemistry previously at perhaps the undergraduate level, perhaps the graduate level, and they've earned a C- or higher. Regan's helping us answer that question as well. So if you prefer to check that out in the Q&A, that's perfectly fine as well. But if you have done chemistry previously, if you would like to do biochemistry with UWS, we would need to see a C- or higher. And then somebody else asked, what's the difference between integrative medicine and functional medicine? So those often are used as similar terms. Some folks might be really specific about what the difference is between those. As I mentioned, we work with the Institute for Functional Medicine in the creation of this degree. So functional medicine for us was clearly the most accurate label. Others may have some arguments for why they use integrative medicine or perhaps holistic medicine as well. All right, now that you read through those elective courses, I want to point out that one of them you may have noticed is the supervised nutrition mentorship. We get a lot of questions about this. So CNS mentorship hours are possible. And the way they are possible is if someone has already arranged an internship that will qualify for their CNS internship hours. If you've looked online, you may see that there are 2 different types of hours. Some are internship ones, some are mentorship ones. And if I'm thinking correctly, I believe the internship ones do need to be in person, while the mentorship ones are more flexible. Because of that, if you are doing an internship and you might like to check in with our program directors, we can have an elective for you that also earns you school credit. So in summary, it's playing a bit of triple duty. You would need to arrange your own internship. That's done many different ways. Often contacting the American Nutrition Association directly is the best way to find out who might be in your area and able to offer internships. They have the largest database, but if that is arranged for you and you might want to earn additional hours by checking in, you, with program director permission, have an elective available to you as well. And again, this curriculum is online by heading to our website, going to the Masters in HNFM, and then clicking curriculum. All right, on to that graduate certificate. It's going to be pretty similar. Some of these courses should look awfully familiar. That is because in the 30 credits of the graduate certificate, all 30 of those credits are seen in our master's degree. One of the questions we often get is, what is the difference between those two? And the 56 credits in the master's degree include the 30 credits in the graduate certificate. So go ahead and read through those, but I suspect you will find them to be pretty familiar. And a big difference in this one is that there is not a capstone course requirement. In our master's degree, we do require a capstone. That is not to the level of thesis. In our graduate certificate, there is no capstone course. So there is not going to be a research paper that you are writing. There's also no internship requirement for either of these programs. All right, Doctorate of Clinical Nutrition. I will let you read over those, of course, but there is one big change you might see at the bottom here. It says online or on-site clinical practical examination. Again, that has gone online. We don't have the new chart like this one for 2023. It's coming out next year. You'll find that in our course catalog. So I had to use an old one, but that is the big change this year, is that it is entirely online. You no longer have to come to our campus in person. So if you are not a citizen of the US, if you're not a permanent resident, no problem. And like I may have mentioned for the graduate certificate there, or for the master's degree, there is a capstone course as well. Another thing I like to highlight in here, as you're reading down that year, I think it is, yes, year 2 courses. One of the things I think is the neatest, go ahead and find that distance clinic internship. For some of you, you may be in states where practicing nutrition with folks in your community is not permissible without a license. This is something we have come up with so that you get those practical skills in a siloed, safe environment. These are people who are trained actors. They are standardized patients, so they are familiar with what their case is and what they should be saying, and they're going to relay that to you in as realistic a manner as possible. You're then going to take in their symptoms and what they've told you about their life and come up with a plan that will be examined by a supervisor, and you'll get feedback on that. But because it is a group of people who are trained actors, you are able to practice this again in a very safe space. It is not breaking any of those perhaps sensitive laws about practicing nutrition with folks in your community. And so we find that this is going to be a really dynamic way to get some of those skills down and feel really confident when you do decide to head into perhaps entrepreneurship or the clinic with somebody else. All right, so what does it look like to be in our program? So as you can see, that master's degree, we've mentioned this, 56 credits, graduate certificate is 30 credits. Most people are taking 2 or 3 classes a quarter. So that typically is right about 7 credits. Some people do bump down to 5. 5 is a number you'll see a little bit later as the minimum number of credits for federal financial aid. So you may want to remember that one. But for most people, 5, 7 credits, maybe 9 on the high end is what they're looking at. On the quarter system, 9 credits is considered full time. So 7 is 3/4 time. As I mentioned, there's 4 quarters in a year, and there is a break between each of those quarters. So you are getting 2 weeks of break to reset and get ready for that next series of courses. Now, credits are adjustable term by term. So there may be a term we're taking 2 classes, 3 classes makes a lot of sense. There might be another term where taking just 1 class might make the most sense. That is perfectly fine. No worries at all. You are able to make those adjustments. Now, it will take a little bit longer to finish up your degree, but as long as you're okay with that, you can go ahead and adjust what that looks like. And then if you're trying to figure out what the hours look like each week, you can see on this page that we recommend 2 to 3 hours per credit per week. So on the lower end for 5 credits, you're looking at 10 hours. On the higher end, 15. If you were taking 7 credits, that's going to look closer to 20 credits on the higher end. For the Doctorate of Clinical Nutrition, as I may have mentioned, that varies in the number of credits that you're taking, but it does tend to be between 7 and 9 hour or credit hours per term. So if you're taking average there of 8, you could be expecting on the high end about 24 hours a week for most terms. In your busiest term, 9 credits would look closer to 30 hours. So just something to keep in mind. little sneak peek into what it would actually look like to be enrolled in a course. And if you might ever be chatting with us on the phone, if you would like to see a sample syllabus, that's something that we have available for an even deeper dive into what these look like, these courses. But you could expect that you're going to have readings each week, you're going to have lectures, but they're in a different format than you might be used to. So we work asynchronously. Most often Saturday is the day that things are released and they are, assigned a due date. And then you have most times about 8 days to get those done. The following Sunday is often the due date. But in that week, you'll have other dates like submit a post to the discussion board by Tuesday and respond to somebody else's by Thursday. Watch all of the lectures by Friday. And as long as you are doing those things by the dates that they are due, you're free to do them when it makes sense for you. So again, the flexibility comes into play. We know that you're leading a very busy life. Many of you are going to be watching this on a later recording because you are busy. And so we have designed our courses around that fact. And so I've had people tell me that they listen to the courses for the first time, maybe when they're commuting, and they might listen to it on 1.25 speed, which is another option because they are pre-recorded lectures because they're then being uploaded and you can watch them asynchronously each week. Some folks watch them at 1.25 speed and then go back a second time and watch them on regular speed. So it can be really handy if you maybe missed something due to somebody asking you something in your house or, commuting. You can go back and make sure that you catch it and you're understanding all the best points from these courses. So we get asked about career pathways a lot. The number one resource that I would refer you to is your state's laws on nutrition. They vary from state to state, but at the very top of this page, you should see the American Nutrition Association's website. That is a fantastic website to visit. It is going to be telling you not only what the laws are in the states that you perhaps live in, perhaps are looking at practicing in. Some people are leaning more towards telehealth. If that sounds like you, it can be helpful to scope out those states beforehand. And so for the folks that are doing that, it not only will list what those laws are, but it also lists the governing authority. So it'll tell you where to get those laws. So if you have questions about them, if you are not sure about how applicable they are to your specific situation, you can go and find exactly who you need to contact. But for people who are looking into a career in nutrition, they're often looking into being an educator. That might be formally, that might be informally. They're often looking into being a health coach or a nutritionist is obviously a popular path. But we also find people who might want to be lecturers, or increasingly, we're seeing people who might want to be training of trainers, the coaching of coaches. They are people who are not only providing nutrition education perhaps to people individually, but might be providing it as a larger group or be doing some consulting for folks who maybe don't have time to go back for a degree, but would like a nutritional input on something that they're doing. So that is something to certainly keep in mind, or as you can see on the screen there, the CNS is a popular pathway, the CCN, and if you might have your doctorate in chiropractic, the ACBN might be an option for you as well. All right, so as I mentioned, we do have prerequisite courses. So those prerequisite courses are typically due right about 6 weeks before the start of the term, unless you might be taking biochemistry with us. I'll go ahead and list them here in case you're super curious, but like I mentioned on our website, there will also be a list whenever you do start an application that keeps track of these as well. But biology, biochemistry, medical terminology, nutrition, and physiology or anatomy and physiology are our 5 prerequisites. All but biochemistry are able to be done at any time in your past. But for biochemistry, it does need a recency of 8 years for it to be valid. There are some exceptions to these. If you feel you may have a career that involves a lot of biochemistry, or you've otherwise kept really fresh on this information, reach out to us. Let's talk about your individual circumstance. We may be able to petition for a waiver. If that doesn't sound like you, if you know you don't have biochemistry and you might want to do it before you enroll with us, we do suggest many places. We could give you the links to them if we're emailing back and forth, easy peasy. But on the screen here, you'll also see some of those places. Portage Learning and Straighterline are probably our most popular ones that people are looking at, but all of these are great options. And I believe almost all of these offer biochemistry as well. Those ones at the M and IFM and Straighterline, those don't have biochemistry, but those other ones, I believe they do. So another great question, when should I be applying? How should I be applying? You'll hear me say it a lot more in this webinar, but reach out to us, schedule an advice appointment, send me an email. Let's talk about your specific circumstance. It's likely that if you have your hands on some unofficial transcripts, I can give you a pretty detailed roadmap about what it might look like to join us. So that sometimes looks like 3 months out for some folks. For other people, it may look more like 6 months, but we're happy to take a look and give you our very best information so that you're able to make the choice that's right for you. When you decide it's time to apply, and you'll see this in the second point, but we do ask that you wrap up your applications in the month after you start them. So when the right time to apply is for you will vary, but submitting a completed application is the best way for us to then pass you along to the interview. In that completed application, you'll also see an essay, and then you'll see a prerequisite timeline will also be needed. So when we are chatting, we can talk about what it looks like for you. For folks who may need most or all of their prerequisites, we do have an option that I feel is underutilized. You'll see it there. It's called a preliminary review. A preliminary review is this wonderful pause button on your application. You could submit as much as you could to an application, get that resume in there, get those recommenders in there. We have the holiday season coming up and you may or may not have some free time, but if you do have free time, it's a great time to get things mailed in, get those transcripts mailed in. But let's say you're working on finishing up a degree or you have 3 more prerequisites. The preliminary review is where we go through, we read as much as we can, and we say, hey, we see that you have done all of this. We are putting a pause button on your application because we like what we see, but we're not at a place where we can give you an A-OK to join us. We can't give you a conditional acceptance yet, but we don't want to think that you're not applying. We don't want to think that you're not working hard. And so we just put a little freeze on your application. Then as you complete those prerequisites, go ahead and send us the transcripts and we'll continue to check them off. When you reach 3 out of 5 prerequisites, things unfreeze and you join the line again, and we'll get you in line for an interview. We'll then hopefully get you a conditional or a full acceptance. It's a great way if you're itching to get things done ahead of time, because we do open the applications a year ahead of time. It is a really good way to get ahead of the crowd. So what else do I suggest when you're applying to UWS? One of them is logging in and becoming familiar with the application portal. If you have received an inquiry email from UWS, if you have received automated emails from us that told you about this webinar, perhaps, then you may be able to log in to UWS and our application portal and reset your password right now. If not, you can create a new account, no problem. But once you log in there, you'll be able to look at the applications you may have submitted in the past. You'll be able to start a new application, and you'll be able to see where your application is in the application timeline. You can actually see a little sample there on the side of what it would look like. But after you get logged in and look around, that's a good time to start gathering your official transcripts. That is the thing that often takes the most time to get to us. Sometimes they take a few weeks. And so I would start with that, certainly. For my international students, something I want to call attention to in that second line is that international students need a NACES, N-A-C-E-S, affiliated credited evaluation. NACES is the group that does the credit evaluation services for the schools and colleges and universities in the US. They are membership group, but there's several people in there who are able to take your degree from a country that's outside the US or Canada, evaluate it, and then translate it to the GPA, degree type, and courses that might be present in the American system. Like I mentioned, this is required. This is a Department of Education request. But it is also oftentimes a starting point for your application so that we know what your GPA is and then what prerequisites you have. You'll, pardon me, you'll also want to upload a current resume or curriculum vitae. You have 2 letters of recommendation. Really neat in the portal, you actually enter their email addresses and it will send off to them the recommendation form. They'll be able to fill it out and you'll see when it is done and checked off in your portal. Again, you'll get that list that has all the outstanding items. You can log in anytime and see that. After that, we'll pass you along for an interview. We do need that minimum prerequisite requirement of 3 out of 5, but hopefully we'll then be able to offer you conditional or full acceptance. And afterwards, we need a $300 tuition deposit to reserve your place in the upcoming class. So tuition is due on the first day of the quarter. We've got our tuition rates listed right there for you, as well as the total amount per program. Hopefully that's an easy way to take it all in, but you'll see $551 per credit for that graduate certificate and that master's program. For the DCN, $687 per credit. Though we do have payment plans available if you may not be looking towards financial aid. Financial aid is very, very common, but other folks may be arranging through a business office. What eventually comes to a monthly payment where they divide into 3 equal parts, and you are paying each month a portion of your tuition due that term. Again, that's through a business office. I believe it's a $30 fee to arrange that, but that's another option for people who may prefer that direction. We also people who use federal financial aid. Financial aid is available for all of our degrees and our programs. The graduate certificate, the master's degree, and the DCN all qualify. And as I may have mentioned earlier, that magic number 5 is coming up again. You do need a minimum of 5 credits each term to qualify for that financial aid. You also need to remain in good academic standing, so 3.0 or higher. And then another thing I make sure to mention is that as you're filling out your FAFSA, you may be thinking, when am I going to hear back about this? You are able to get matched with a financial aid package after you were admitted to a program. So we aim for the month after you were admitted to a program to get you a financial aid package. But before that, there isn't an acceptance to match it to. So that is one of the benefits of making sure we get that application done in that month timeline, as that quick turnaround means that we can get you a quicker turnaround. All right, some tips to keep in mind. I went ahead and threw a picture of my calendar up there. Some of you have seen that. Bregan has one as well. We'll include our contact information at the end of this webinar. It'll be our final slide. But you can choose what type of appointment you'd like. If you're on a bit of a time crunch, we do have a quick check-in option as well. And then it will populate the dates and the times that I am free. You can go ahead and make an appointment with me. So easy, but it makes me reserve a time for you. It reserves an entire hour in my calendar where you and I can connect and talk about your very specific circumstance. We do not typically use the entire hour, closer to 15 or 20 minutes most of the time, but occasionally we really get to talking, and I've looked down and said, oh my goodness, I can't believe it's almost an hour. So I like to make sure to have the extra time just in case. Our busiest time of the year is going to be in the 2 months before that deadline. So you'll see at the bottom here that our spring deadline, the final deadline is February 10th. Our priority application deadline, if we were to fill, we'd go with folks who submitted before this deadline. That's going to be at the end of January. So we advise folks that if you have the ability to start on that application a little bit sooner, if you're considering maybe a preliminary review, if that sounds like a good option to get it done before the holidays, please do. It is always nice to know what your plans are going to be come spring and have that all nice and settled, because it's just a little busier during those times of the year, those 2 months before the deadline. And as we mentioned, you might also get a conditional acceptance. If we're seeing 3 or more prerequisites, that puts us within the realm of a conditional acceptance. And if you're still looking for places for those prerequisites. As I mentioned, that we can send you the links, no problem. But we have Straighter Line and Portage Learning as the institutions we most often recommend and that we see people utilize the most often. That partially is because they are start anytime and work at your own pace. So if that is of interest, check those out. All right. So next steps for you, that will be finding a time to connect with me or with Bregan. You'll see that on the final slide. Another good place to check out, you may have found this link to this webinar in the Connect with Admissions virtually series of links on that page, but that's not where you found this link to sign up. I would head back there and see if you can't find the UWS webinar or a sample lecture from Dr. Heather's Wiki or some of our past webinars. It is really an incredible collection of information on there. As I mentioned, planning your date in advance is really helpful. We have that spring start, we have that fall start. Spring is going to start in April. October is when our falls start. And so if you got an idea of when the best time would be, that is a great time to talk to us. Is shortly after that, we can let you know if that sounds like a realistic timeline, if we might be able to shorten that timeline, or if we might just have helpful resources for you. Applications are due 2 months prior to the start date for each program. You saw that on the previous page. And as I mentioned, prerequisites are due 6 weeks before the start of the term. So questions, this is a really great catch-all email. If you're not sure who your advisor is, if you've not gotten an email from one of us yet, no problem. Email admissions@uws.edu. They will get you connected with who you need to be connected with. We also online have some FAQs. That's nice to get some big questions out of the way, but it's sometimes nice to hear it straight from the person who's reading your application. So if you would like to email us, feel free to reach out to your assigned advisor, or for financial aid, that is the financial aid email and the phone number right there, finaid@uws.edu. They are a wonderful resource. They also have a website that has just a ton of stuff on it. So if you are looking for just general info on financial aid, check out our website. It's got some really, really great links. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take you to our very final slide. We have gotten through all the biggest information. I'll leave you here for a little bit so you can write down some of that. Again, if you're not sure who your advisor is, if you have not yet received an email from us, that's no problem at all. Go ahead and email that admissions@uws.edu email, or honestly, if you email one of us and it is not your advisor, we'll make sure that you get connected with your advisor as well. So email whoever you want, and we'll be happy to help. But we look forward to being a resource for you. We look forward to getting you more information. I like to say more information is more information. So if you're still left with questions, it looks like Bregan has done an amazing job of clearing up that Q&A. But if you still have questions, let us know. We'll be sure to reach out to you. It has been my pleasure to be chatting with you guys today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. But this will be the end of our webinar, and have a great holiday next week, and thank you for joining us.